Hi, welcome to this month's Timely Topic. I'm Tingwei Chiang.
And I'm Burkhart.
And today we will be talking about a very challenging topic, the death of a loved one. Over our careers, we've walked through the passing of a loved one with many families. We know how tremendously challenging this time can be.
Yeah, the emotional weight alone can be completely overwhelming. And the last thing anyone wants to talk about are their finances. And unfortunately, there's a lot to do.
I think the most important thing to remember is they don't have to go through this alone. We at Cutler are here to help them.
First thing you do after the funeral is take some time, take a deep breath. Reach out to your support team, your financial advisor, your CPA, your estate attorney. They will together will all help guide you. The rule of thumb used to be, 10 copies of the death certificate. It's not really necessary anymore. Most companies, including Cutler, we just need a copy of it. In fact, we could even have it emailed to us. So we suggest just getting 3, maybe 3 to 5, would you say?
I think that's a great number. Now is also a great time to gather all of your important documents. So start thinking, things like your will, maybe your trust, the title to the house, any deeds, mortgages, account statements. If the decedent had a financial plan, the balance sheet in the financial plan actually is a great place to start. Chris, we ran many financial plans for clients. The balance sheet is where all of the assets and liabilities are listed.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Tingwei, in most cases, the funeral home will notify Social Security. However, it's important to probably reach out yourself and let them know just in case. Social Security will continue to make deposits into the loved one's account. Be sure not to spend that money because once they receive the notification, they'll pull that back.
Now, Chris, did you know that it isn't just the spouse who gets survivor benefits? Surprisingly, a lot of additional folks are available. So for example, if you are the child of the decedent, if you are an ex-spouse, if you are the dependent parent, you may be entitled to benefits. What you need to realize, though, is you cannot apply for these benefits online. Social Security actually requires you to give them a call and schedule an appointment. A lot of times they'll be able to resolve this on the phone call, but sometimes they will require you to go into the office.
So after reaching out to Social Security, what are the next steps?
After Social Security, the next step will be to reach out to the decedent's employer. A lot of times the decedent was receiving benefits from the employer, such as healthcare. Maybe they were paying for a life insurance policy. Maybe there were pension plans involved. Maybe there were stock options, RSUs. This is a great time to reach out to the employer to figure out how to get those assets distributed.
Great to know. So next steps really can't happen until you've received the death certificate. Once you've received the death certificate, then you can reach out to the banks, all your financial institutions, your life insurance policies, pension plans, and start moving those assets over. But that can't begin until you have a copy of the death certificate.
I think it is important to figure out which accounts were joined, which one had beneficiaries, which one will flow through estate accounts. But this is a great starting point.
And some of those accounts flow very easily. So if there was a designation, a beneficiary designation. So IRAs, Roth IRAs typically have a beneficiary designated. You might have a TOD, a transfer on death, on a joint account, joint accounts with rights of survivorship. These all move very easily. However, if there is not a beneficiary and it flows according to the terms of the will, then it takes more time and it's more complex.
It may involve opening up probate. It may involve opening up an estate account. You likely will need to apply for an estate tax ID. These can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. So we recommend that you work with a knowledgeable CPA or estate planning attorney for this process.
And if you don't have one, your advisor can give you a recommendation. We work very closely with a number of professionals.
Let's spend a little bit of time talking about cost basis. With a lot of accounts, cost basis is the purchase price that you originally bought the securities for. Upon the death of a loved one, that cost basis gets stepped up. In simple terms, all this means is we're resetting that purchase price to the day that they passed. It is an important process, but it doesn't happen automatically.
No, it doesn't happen automatically. That's something that we will do for you with your Cutler accounts. But if you have accounts outside of Cutler, you also need to contact those institutions and tell them to get the step up in cost basis. This is a huge tax saving and preserving wealth for the family. It's a very important step. You want to make sure that isn't missed. And it's easy to do with investment accounts. But what about your home? The home can be a bit more complex, right, Tingwei?
You know, the home is one that people often forget about because precisely the brokerage accounts, you see the statements, right? You're living in the home. You don't necessarily think of your home as an asset that has a value that will come into play later on, say that when you sell the home. So you would think with Redfin and Zillow that you can just easily go out there and grab the value of that.
Yeah.
Did you know that the IRS does not officially recognize those values? I was shocked when I learned that.
Right.
So what our recommendation is, and really it is best practice, is you should get a formal appraisal of your home and keep that for your records.
Now that you have some of those tasks behind you, it's time to really focus on you and start moving forward. And a great place to start is by revisiting your financial plan.
This is a great time to do a budget reset. A lot of things have changed. And so as part of your financial plan, now we want to revisit for example, your income stream. There are some incomes such as Social Security from the decedent that probably have dropped off. Your expenses have changed a lot.
Right, and tax planning.
Tax planning is huge because this is the last year for a surviving spouse to file married filing jointly. The following year, the spouse will be filing single. And with that, that means the tax brackets, which used to be this wide, are now this wide. And so for the surviving spouse will see income increase, especially if they've inherited their spouse's IRA, for example, right? And then also because their brackets are only half as wide, they're gonna see not only the income increase, but the tax on that, they could be bumped up into a higher tax bracket, which will also
has a trickle-down effect
for Medicare premiums, which are tied to income. So this is a great time to revisit all of that. The last thing to discuss is the estate tax filing.
Right.
Estates are a little bit different than individuals. The tax bracket on estates are very compressed. The exemption amount is very low. And so for many estates that we have seen, likely some income has been accrued in the estate account while the executor was distributing the assets.
Right.
So usually there is an income tax return that should be filed, as well as the closing of the estate itself. Now, for most clients, we recommend that they work with a knowledgeable CPA or estate planning attorney and not try to do this on their own.
No, because it's extremely complex and it's not like filing your standard income tax. And you know, Tingwei, we've covered some pretty big topics here, but there's just a lot of little details and that you wouldn't think about. So like canceling magazine subscriptions, canceling the cell phone subscription services, and we've put together a checklist, and the checklist is actually organized by time because people who have lost a loved one, they're feeling overwhelmed. So knowing kind of what to focus on and when to focus on it, what's important and when it becomes important, and really trying to think through all of those little things, all of those little details. Your advisor has access to this checklist. Please request a copy of that from them, and it really helps take some of the stress out of the situation.
You know, none of this is easy. Even with the checklist, it is not an easy task. But having that checklist removes the stress of having to keep all of that information and knowledge in your head, right? Yeah. So yes, please, as Chris mentioned, please request a copy. Just know, again, this is a process that you do not have to go through alone. That is what we here at Cutler are here to help you do. Give us a call. If you have lost a loved one, we send our condolences. But please do not hesitate to reach out.
You don't have to go through this alone.